Hello and welcome back, class. Now we will dig in, if you would, to Act 5, and we see the psychological costs that the deed and the subsequent deeds after they murder Duncan and the aftermath have had on Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And I think that we can definitely see evidence of psychosis in both of them, paranoia, schizophrenia, fueled by hubris and duplicity. And again, um, it's very, very interesting how Shakespeare is describing psychological conditions related to mental illness many years before they even had the names for these conditions. Um, so the doctor and the nursemaid, the gentlewoman, are observing Lady Macbeth, and notice how she starts confessing the things they've done. We see her guilty conscience, if you would, because remember, they can't sleep because of their guilt, their insomnia, their paranoia. Both of those things are physical manifestations, right, of their guilt itself, just like with the blood on the hands, that symbolism that you can't just wash it away. You can't just sleep away guilt. And it, as Macbeth says, after he kills Duncan, Macbeth doth murdered sleep. Literally, he is unable to sleep after that scene, right? So they're observing Lady Macbeth. She constantly has a candle lit, um, right? And the doctor says, "You see, her eyes are open," and the gentlewoman says, "But their sense is shut." So although she can physically see, she's unable to perceive because she's in a state of psychosis, right? And she keeps rubbing her hands and washing her hands. Why? Because she's trying to get the spots of blood out. Again, the symbolism here is very, very important. Um, and she says she does it for almost a quarter of an hour. And she says, "Out, damn spot, out, I say, 1, 2, why then 'tis time to do it. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie, a soldier and a feared," because remember when she was questioning his masculinity. "What need we fear, who knows it, when none can call our power to account?" Well, yeah, but now that you're confessing, everybody's going to know. Yet who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him, right? And she says, "The Thane of Fife had a wife, Macduff. Where is she now? Will these hands ne'er be clean? No more of that, my lord, no more of that. You mar all with this starting." It's like she's giving a recap of everything that happened in the play. The doctor says to the gentlewoman, "You better get out of here. You've known what you should not." And she replies, "She has said what she should not. She has spoke what she should not." I'm sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known. Again, with the blood. Here's the smell of the blood still. Look at this hyperbole, this excessive exaggeration here for emphasis, figure of speech. All the perfumes of Arabia would not sweeten this little hand. Oh, oh, oh. Right? And the doctor says, "Oh, the heart is sorely charged," right? Um, and he even says, "This disease is beyond my practice, yet I have known those which have walked in their sleep who have died holily in their beds." Right? And she says, "Wash your hands, put on your nightgown, look not so pale. I tell you yet again, Banquo's buried. He cannot come out on his grave." And the doctor says, "Even so." And Lady Macbeth says, "To bed, to bed." There's a knocking at the gate. "Come, come, come. Give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone." To bed, to bed, to bed. And I think that's a very, very resonating statement that Lady Macbeth makes. What is done cannot be undone, especially with relation to critical thinking, to duplicity, to doing illogical things. You don't just get a do over, you don't get a chance to revise. What is done cannot be undone, right? And it's ironic that she's saying to bed because she's constantly has the light. And the gentlewoman says, yes, she'll go to bed, but foul whisperings are abroad. Unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. It's kind of like a karma in some ways. And same with Hamlet when he puts on that play and he says, you know, I've heard that people who are guilty, if you reenact it, they'll show their guilt. Remember, what they did is unnatural. To kill a king is a really big deal. It's an act of regicide. And the notion that their mind is sick, infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets, right? The truth always comes out in some ways, as that expression goes. More needs she the divine than the physician. God, God, forgive us all. He's saying she needs religion. She needs God. I can't help her. Look after her, remove from her the means of all annoyance, and still keep eyes upon her. So good night. My mind she has mated and amazed my sight. I think, but dare not speak. And then the gentlewoman says goodnight as well. So, Act 5, Scene 2, right? The plot with regard to the battle and attempting to overtake Macbeth continues. I want to skip ahead, though, to Act 5, Scene 3, when Macbeth and the doctor meet, right? And Macbeth essentially, right, he's saying, bring me no more reports, right? We see him also in a state of denial as well as paranoia and anxiety. And he's repeating the witch's prophecies, and it fuels his hubris, his arrogance that he will not die. The servant comes in, right, and says there's a bunch of soldiers, right, and Macbeth's like, what soldiers? Right, and he says the English. And he says, because remember, Macbeth thinks he's unconquerable, right? Because he will be king until the woods come to the castle, and none of woman born shall harm him, right? So he starts chatting with Satan, right? And we see his nihilism. He becomes very jaded, and like I said, he's very solipsistic. He's an egotist. And then we have more news has come in. And what does he say? I'll fight till from my bones my flesh be hacked. Give me my armor. But again, it's a false sense of security because he thinks no man of woman born will harm him. And Satan's like, you don't need it yet. He says, no, I'll put it on. Right? And then he asks the doctor about Lady Macbeth. And he says, how is your patient, doctor? He says, not so sick, my lord, as she is troubled with thick coming fancies that keep her from rest. Right? Her psychosis is affecting her, right? And Macbeth then says, cure her of that. Canst thou not minister to a mind disease, right? Psychology, mental illness, mental health. Pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with some sweet oblivious antidote, cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart. Can't you just cure her? Just like you would cure someone of a physical ailment. I mean, again, it's kind of predating psychology, right? And he says therein the patient must minister to himself. Kind of reflection of philosophical counseling, right? And Macbeth says, throw physic to the dogs, all none of it. And he says, if thou couldst, doctor, cast the water of my land, find her disease and purge it to a sound and pristine health, I would applaud thee to the very echo that should applaud again. He's saying, can you cure my country? Right? Can you, what purgative drug would scour these English hence? Hearest thou of them? Right? And the doctor says, aye, my good lord, your royal preparation makes us hear something. Right? And he says, I will not be afraid of death and bane till Burnham Forest come to Dunsinane. Notice the rhyming. And the doctor says, were I from Dunsinane away and clear, prophet again should hardly draw me near. Now, notice the aside, the moment of omniscience, he basically tells us, without Macbeth hearing, how horrible a place it is and how he can't wait to get away from it. And it is a rotten place because what is foul is running amok, and what is foul are the witches, are Macbeth, are Lady Macbeth. They've committed multiple murders, and their psychosis is running rampant, fueled by their hubris and leading to their duplicity. It's a very, very powerful ending to the play. We see In Act 5, Scene 4, they continue their preparations to attack the castle. And we know that the witches, both prophecies, right? If you finish reading the play as you should have, right? When you finish reading it, you recognize um, that essentially Macbeth, he just continues to just be undaunted in his unwavering, I should say, in his confidence. And then we hear a cry within of a woman. And he says, "What is that noise?" And Satan says, "It's the cry of woman." Now everybody leaves, and Satan leaves, and notice how Macbeth is on stage alone for this soliloquy. "I have almost forgotten the taste of fears." He doesn't even know what it's like to be afraid anymore. "The time has been my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek," right? If I had heard that scream, I would have freaked out about it. "And my fell of hair would at dismal treaties rouse and stir as life were in it. I have supped full with horrors, direness familiar to my slaughterous thoughts cannot once start me." He's had so much horror that nothing affects. He's become unfeeling. He's become very nihilistic, right? And Satan, then he asks Satan, "Who was that?" And he says, "The queen is dead." Now remember, Macbeth claims he did, right? Part of the reason why he does it is all for her, because he told us at the beginning, right? This is not a logical thing for us to do. There's no logical reason why I should do this. And then she persuades him through her fallacious appeals. But notice how it doesn't even really faze him. She would have died hereafter. No, she would have died eventually. There would have been a time for such a word. And this is one of the more famous soliloquies, right? "Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle." Now, paying attention to this analogy, obviously Shakespeare is making an analogy to the theater, and as a playwright is extremely significant. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Nihilism, right? We see it, he's become extremely self-absorbed, extremely very, very jaded as his psychosis runs rampant. And unfortunately, right, in addition to him finding out Lady Macbeth is dead, which doesn't really necessarily affect him that much, he says, "Well, I've supped full with horrors." Then the messenger comes in, and this is what really bothers him. The messenger says, right, "I'm watching on the hill, and I looked toward Burnham, and the wood began to move." So what we realize is that the soldiers have chopped down the trees to use them as camouflage as they are attacking Macbeth's castle. So Burnham Wood has come to Dunsinane. And then on top of that, we learn that Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. He's a cesarean child, so he was not of woman born. Therefore, both of the witches' prophecies come true. And Macduff and Malcolm are able to reclaim the throne. Macduff gets revenge and kills Macbeth, and Malcolm reclaims the throne as the rightful heir. So it's a very interesting last act, and I think this moment here when we see his reaction to Lady Macbeth dying really speaks a lot about where he's at the end of the play, and just how much the psychological costs of their illogical decisions and actions throughout the play have taken their toll on both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. So I hope you found this enjoyable and educational. As always, let me know if you have any questions. And next up, right, is Othello. I look forward.